They called me the librarian. That was the polite name. Behind my back, usually in the officers' club after 3 or 4 whiskeys, it was the professor, Paperback Frank, or sometimes just the coward. Not because I wouldn't fly, I flew every mission they put on the chalkboard, but because while the other guys were unwinding, playing poker, chasing skirts in London, or drinking until they couldn't remember the faces of the friends we'd lost the day before, I was reading. I had a stack of books under my cot that was taller than my flight boots. Aerodynamics manuals, translated German physics papers from the 1930s, memoirs of World War I aces like emotional tacticians. I wasn't trying to be better than them. I was trying to survive. I was terrified. Every single time I climbed into that P-51 Mustang, I felt a cold hand grip my stomach that didn't let go until my wheels touched the grass back in England. I figured if I knew everything, the math, the wind, the engine limitations, the enemy's psychology, maybe I could cheat death just one more time. They laughed. They said you fly by the seat of your pants, not by the index of a textbook. They said, when a Focke-Wulf 190 is on your tail, spitting 20mm cannon shells at your canopy, knowing the drag coefficient of a split S maneuver won't save you. They were wrong. And on November 27, 1944, over a gray, freezing patch of sky near the Rhine River, 6 Luftwaffe pilots found that out the hard way. I remember the morning started with that damp, bone-chilling cold you only get in East Anglia. It settles in your lungs. I was sitting on my bunk, lacing up my boots, staring at a diagram I'd sketched on a napkin the night before. It was a theory about energy retention in a climbing turn. Miller, a loudmouth kid from Texas who was a hell of a pilot but had absolutely no discipline, walked by and flicked the napkin out of my hand. He laughed, blowing smoke from his cigarette right in my face. He told me to save the geometry for the schoolhouse after the war, assuming we lived that long. He told me the Germans didn't care about math. He said they were wolves, and we were sheepdogs. And the only thing that mattered was who had the sharper teeth. I didn't say anything. I just picked up the napkin, folded it carefully, and put it in my breast pocket, right next to the picture of my girl Sarah. I didn't have the heart to tell Miller that wolves are predictable if you study how they hunt. We briefed at 0600. The target was an oil refinery deep in Germany, high value, heavily defended. We were escorting B-17s, the big friends. Our job was simple. Keep the flies off the meat. Don't chase kills. Don't go glory hunting. Just stick to the bombers and bring them home. But everyone knew that once the flak started bursting and the Messerschmitts dropped out of the sun, the plan went out the window. It always did. As we walked out to the tarmac, the ground crew was already revving the engines. That sound, the Merlin engine, it's a roar that vibrates in your chest. It sounds like power. It sounds like anger. My crew chief, a lanky kid named Smitty, patted the side of my plane. I had named her the Axiom. Another nerdy joke. Nobody laughed. Smitty just looked at me with those tired eyes and told me the number 3 cylinder was running a little hot, but she'd hold. I nodded, climbed up the wing, and slid into the cockpit. The smell of high-octane fuel, leather, and sweat hit me. It was the smell of the office. We formed up over the channel. It was a massive armada. Hundreds of bombers, trails of condensation stretching out like white scars across the blue. From up there, war looks almost sterile. It's just machines and geometry. But I knew what was waiting. We crossed the enemy coast and the flak started immediately. Black puffs of smoke appearing out of nowhere. It's a strange feeling, flying through explosions. You can't hear them over the engine, you just see them. And sometimes you hear the ping of shrapnel hitting the aluminum skin of your plane, like hail on a tin roof. We were at 26,000 feet. The air was thin and cold. My oxygen mask was tight against my face, smelling of rubber. I was scanning the sky, constantly twisting my head. My neck always hurt after a mission. You have to keep looking. High, low, check your 6. The sun is the enemy's best friend. They like to dive out of the glare so you don't see them until your wing is blown off. We were near the target when the call came over the radio. Bandits, 12 o'clock high. The calm shattered. I looked up and saw them. A swarm of black dots descending rapidly. Focke-Wulf 190s and Me 109s. They weren't going for us. They were diving straight for the bombers. The formation broke. It was chaos. Mustangs dropped their external fuel tanks and peeled off to intercept. The sky turned into a swirling dogfight in seconds. I saw a B-17 take a direct hit to the wing root, fire trailing as it entered a slow, agonizing spiral downward. I saw parachutes. I saw pieces of metal that used to be airplanes fluttering down like confetti. I locked onto a 109 that was lining up on a straggling bomber. I rolled the axiom over and dove. The speed built up fast. The controls stiffened. This was where the physics came in. I knew exactly how much stress the airframe could take. I knew the terminal velocity. I fired a short burst just to spook him. He broke left. I followed. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. I lost him in the clouds, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was, when I popped out of the cloud bank, I wasn't alone. I had been separated from my flight. That's the cardinal sin of fighter combat. Never fly alone. I checked my tail. Nothing. I checked below. Nothing. Then I looked up. 6 of them. 6 Focke-Wulf 190s, the long-nose variety. The serious ones. They were circling about 2,000 feet above me, like vultures spotting a dying animal. They had the altitude advantage. They had the numbers. They had the sun. By all rights, I was a dead man. I could almost hear Miller's voice in my headset, laughing, asking me what chapter of the book covered 6-to-1 odds. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. My mouth went dry. Panic is the real enemy. Panic makes you freeze, or it makes you do something stupid. I forced myself to breathe. I remembered a passage I'd read about the visual perception of speed and the OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. I had seconds. They saw me. 2 of them dipped their wings and started a dive. The lead pair. The other 4 stayed high, waiting to pick me off if I dodged the first 2. It was a classic execution maneuver. They expected me to dive. That's what every sane pilot does. You dive, you try to outrun them, you pray your engine has more horsepower than theirs. But I knew the data. The FU-190 had a superior roll rate, but at high speeds, its elevator controls became heavy. It couldn't pull out of a dive as sharply as a Mustang. And I knew something else, something from a German technical manual I'd struggled through with a dictionary. Their fuel injection system worked differently under negative Gs than the older models, but their pilots were trained to avoid negative G maneuvers because they believed it stalled the engine. It didn't, not on that model, but the pilots believed it did. Psychology. I didn't dive. I did the opposite. I cut the throttle. It was suicide. It was insanity. You never give up energy in a dogfight, but I cut the throttle and threw the flaps down. The axiom shuddered violently like she had hit a brick wall. My speed dropped from 350 miles per hour to 160 in a heartbeat. The 2 German pilots diving on me were expecting a fast target moving away. Instead, I was suddenly a stationary object hanging in the air. They overshot. They roared past me so close I could see the rivets on their fuselages. I saw the pilot in the lead plane turn his head, looking back in total confusion. He couldn't slow down. He was committed to the dive. Now I was behind them. But I had no energy. I was a sitting duck for the 4 guys upstairs. This was the moment. The book move. I slammed the throttle forward, retracted the flaps, and hauled back on the stick. The Mustang screamed. I wasn't trying to chase the 2 who passed me. I was going for the ones above. It's called a vertical reversal, but I added a twist. Literally. I utilized the torquing of the engine to snap the plane into a violent corkscrew climb. It looked like I was out of control. To the Germans above, I probably looked like a novice who had stalled and was tumbling. They hesitated. That hesitation was everything. They didn't fire. They watched. They were waiting for me to fall out of the sky so they could save their ammo. By the time they realized I was still flying, I was underneath the formation of 4. I was in their blind spot. I came up right under the belly of the trailing aircraft. He never saw me. I poured 50 caliber rounds into his fuselage. The plane erupted. No fire, just a disintegration of parts. The engine block tore loose. I flew right through the debris cloud. Oil splattered my windshield. 1 down. 5 to go. The element of surprise was gone, but now I had chaos on my side. The formation shattered. They broke in 4 different directions. That was their mistake. They lost their coordination. They were reacting, not thinking. I was thinking. I picked the one breaking left. I knew he would try to turn back towards his wingman. I calculated the intercept point. I didn't aim at the plane. I aimed at the empty air where he was going to be in 2 seconds. I squeezed the trigger. The tracers drew a line in the sky, and he flew right into it. His right wing sheared off. He spun away into the clouds. 2 down. But now the other 3 were angry, and the 2 from the initial dive were climbing back up. I was still outnumbered 4 to 1. My engine was screaming, the temperature gauge redlining. I spoke to the plane. "Come on, baby. Hold together. Just a little longer." I did something then that Miller used to make fun of. I visualized the airspace like a 3D grid. I stopped seeing planes and started seeing energy states. Who was fast? Who was slow? Who was high? Who was low? The leader of the high flight was coming at me head-on. A game of chicken, closing speed of 800 miles per hour. If we collided, we'd both be vapor. If I turned early, he'd shoot my belly. If I waited too long, we'd crash. I waited. I watched his nose cannon flashing. I felt the hits. Thump, 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 shaking my tail. I held it. Then a violent kick of the rudder and a snap roll. I passed him with inches to spare. The turbulence from his plane slammed me sideways. I knew he would have to do a wide turn to come back. I ignored him. I went for the one who was slow. There was a 190 trying to climb, trying to regain the altitude I had stolen. He was hanging on his prop, slow, heavy, a physics equation waiting to be solved. I pulled in behind him. Easy shot. Too easy. I hesitated. For a split second, I saw the man in the cockpit. He was looking back at me. I saw his goggles. I saw the fear. He was just a kid, probably younger than me. He knew he was dead. In the books, war is noble. In the books, it's about strategy and courage. In reality, it's about murdering a kid who made a mistake with his throttle setting. I squeezed the trigger. The cockpit glass shattered. His head slumped forward. The plane rolled over and fell. 3 down. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt sick, but I didn't have time to vomit. The head-on guy was back and he had a friend. They were bracketing me, one from the left, one from the right. The Thatch Weave, or the German equivalent. They were trying to box me in. I had no speed left. I was out of ammo in my outboard guns. I had maybe 10 seconds of firing time left in the inboards. I needed to disappear. I looked down. The cloud deck was at 8,000 feet. It was a thick gray blanket. Safety. But to get there, I had to dive through their crossfire. I pushed the stick forward. The Mustang groaned. The G-forces pushed my eyes back into my skull. My vision grayed out. I was functioning on instinct and memory now. I remembered a passage about optical illusions in high-contrast environments. I banked hard towards the sun before diving, blinding them for a fraction of a second, then rolled inverted and pulled into the dive. Tracers zipped past my canopy like angry hornets. I heard a loud crack. Something vital had been hit behind my seat. The radio went dead. The cockpit filled with the smell of electrical fire. But I was diving, fast. The clouds rushed up to meet me. 10,000 feet, 9,000. The 2 Germans were still on me, firing. I could see the ground rushing up through the holes in the clouds. I hit the white mist at 500 miles per hour. Visibility went to 0. I leveled out, praying I wouldn't slam into a mountainside. It was silent in the clouds, just the roar of the engine and my own jagged breathing. I stayed there for 10 minutes, flying blind, watching my instruments. The artificial horizon was tumbling. It was broken. The compass was spinning. I was flying by the seat of my pants now, ironically. But it was the reading that had got me here. The knowledge of the enemy's stall speed, the optical trick with the sun, the counterintuitive flap maneuver. When I finally dropped out of the clouds, I was low, treetop level. I was alone. The sky was empty. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the stick. I looked at my fuel gauge. Empty. I was running on fumes. I limped, the axiom, back across the lines. Navigating by following a set of railroad tracks I recognized from a map I had memorized 3 weeks ago. Another book. Another map. I landed at a forward airstrip in Belgium. The wheels didn't lock, and the right gear collapsed. The plane skidded off the runway, spinning around in the mud before coming to a stop. The fire crews rushed out, pulling me from the cockpit. I couldn't walk. My knees were jelly. They sat me on a crate of ammo and gave me a cigarette. I didn't smoke, but I took it. I looked at the plane. The tail was shredded. There were holes in the fuselage you could put your fist through. The crew chief at this base, a guy I didn't know, whistled. "How the hell did you fly this thing, Mac?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just reached into my flight suit pocket and pulled out that folded napkin with the diagram on it. It was soaked in sweat and oil, but the geometry was still there. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. I got back to my squadron 2 days later. I walked into the barracks. It was quiet. They had already packed my stuff. They thought I was dead. My books were in a box on my cot. Miller was there. He looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. He didn't say anything. He just walked over, took the box of books, and put them back on the shelf, one by one. Then he poured me a drink. "Welcome back, Professor," he said. There was no sarcasm in his voice anymore, just respect, and maybe a little fear. That mission changed me. It validated everything I believed, but it also took something away. I realized that knowing how to kill efficiently didn't make the killing any easier. I had used physics and psychology to end 3 lives and confuse 3 others. It was clinical, it was cold, and it was effective. I flew 40 more missions after that. I survived the war. I came home, went to college on the GI Bill, became an engineer. I built bridges. I tried to build things that brought people together, things that lasted. But every time I looked at a suspension bridge, all I could see were the vector forces, the tension, the compression, and the arc of a falling airplane. I'm an old man now. My eyesight is going. I can't read the fine print in my books anymore, but I can still see that kid's face in the cockpit of the Focke-Wulf. I can still feel the vibration of the stall. I can still smell the burning insulation. They ridiculed the reader pilot, but the reader pilot is the one who is here to tell you the story. And the lesson isn't that books save lives. The lesson is that war doesn't care about your dignity, your nickname, or your hobbies. It only cares about one thing. Are you ready to do the unthinkable to survive? I was, and I've been trying to forgive myself for it ever since. Sometimes late at night, when the house is quiet and my grandkids are asleep, I go to my bookshelf. I pull down that old copy of Aerodynamics. I open it to the chapter on drag coefficients. I run my finger over the equations. They are clean. They are pure. They make sense. War makes no sense. It's just noise and blood and luck. But for a few seconds over Germany in 1944, I made the war make sense. I turned the chaos into a math problem, and I solved it. And that's the only reason I'm breathing today. But the story doesn't end there. See, everyone thinks the war ended in 1945. For most of us, the shooting stopped, but the war kept going. It followed us home. It sat at the dinner table with us. It woke us up at 3 a.m. And for me, the strangest chapter happened 30 years later, in a small bookstore in Chicago. It was 1974. I was browsing the history section, looking for a gift for my son. I felt someone watching me. You know that feeling? The hair on the back of your neck stands up. It's the same feeling I had in the cockpit that day when I spotted the 6 bandits. I turned around. Standing there was a man. He was about my age, maybe a little older. He was dressed neatly in a gray suit. He held a cane in his left hand. He was looking at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. He stepped forward, limping slightly. "Excuse me," he said. His English was perfect, but there was an accent. German. A hard, clipped edge to the vowels. "Are you Frank Sullivan?" I froze. I hadn't worn a uniform in 3 decades. "I am," I said, my voice guarded. "Do I know you?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It was a sad, tired smile. "Not officially," he said, "but we have met. Over the Rhine. November 1944. You were flying a Mustang. I was flying a Focke-Wulf. My blood ran cold. The bookstore disappeared. I was back in the cockpit. I was back in the cold." "I don't know what you're talking about," I lied. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run. "You performed a maneuver," he continued, ignoring my denial. "A throttle cut followed by a vertical spiral. It was unconventional. It was brilliant. I was the flight leader. You made me look very foolish." I stared at him. This was the man I had passed head-on? The man whose wingman I had killed? "Why are you here?" I asked. "How did you find me?" "I have been looking for the pilot who read for a long time," he said. He reached into his jacket pocket. I flinched, instinctively stepping back, my hand forming a fist. Old habits. He saw my reaction and moved slowly, pulling out a small, worn book. It was a flight log. "My name is Hans, and I believe you have something that belongs to me. Or rather, I have something that belongs to you. A piece of mind, perhaps." We went for coffee. It was the most surreal hour of my life. Sitting across from a man who had tried to kill me, and whom I had tried to kill, eating blueberry muffins in a diner in Chicago. He told me about his war. He told me about the fear. He told me that after our encounter, he was grounded for nerves. He couldn't get back in the cockpit. That maneuver, that moment where I defied the logic of air combat, broke his confidence. He said it saved his life because he wasn't in the air 2 weeks later when his entire squadron was wiped out by P-47s. He told me I saved him by defeating him. We talked about books. He was a reader too. Goethe, Schiller, Mann. We realized that while our governments were sending us to slaughter each other, we were probably reading the same authors in our bunks, just in different languages. It was a sick joke, a cosmic error. We shook hands when we left. His grip was firm. "The war is over, Frank," he said. "Let it be over." I watched him walk away, limping on that bad leg. I never saw him again. But that night, I slept through the night for the first time in 30 years. I didn't dream of fire. I didn't dream of falling. I dreamt of a library in the sky, where planes didn't have guns and the only turbulence was the turning of pages. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. But peace is a fleeting thing. Just when you think you've put the ghost to rest, something pulls them back up. For me, it wasn't a German pilot this time. It was a letter I received in 1995, the 50th anniversary of the end of the war. There were celebrations everywhere, parades, documentaries. Everyone wanted to shake a veteran's hand. I usually stayed away from that stuff. I didn't like the hero worship. They didn't know about the kid in the cockpit I killed. They didn't know about the vomit and the terror. They just saw the medals. The letter was from a woman in Ohio. Her name was Margaret. She wrote that she was the sister of a pilot named Jimmy Tex Miller. My Miller, the loudmouth, the bully, the guy who respected me only after I became a killer. I hadn't thought about Miller in years. He didn't make it home. He was shot down over the Bulge in '45. Margaret wrote that she found a letter Miller had written to her but never mailed. It was found in his personal effects. She sent me a copy. I sat in my kitchen, my hands trembling as I held the photocopy of Miller's handwriting. It was messy, scrawled. "Dear Marge," it read, "the war is getting bad. I don't know if I'll make it back for Christmas, but I wanted to tell you about a guy in my squad, Frank. We call him the Professor. I used to give him a hard time. I was jealous, I guess. He's smart. He understands things I don't. The other day, he took on 6 Jerrys by himself and came back. He didn't brag. He just went back to his books. It made me realize that being a tough guy isn't about how loud you talk. It's about what you've got inside. If I don't come back, tell Ma I tried to be more like Frank." I wept. I put my head on the table and cried like a baby. Miller, the guy who made my life hell, the guy I thought despised me, had looked up to me. He died, trying to be like me, and I had spent my whole life feeling guilty for surviving when better men like him died. I realized then that we were all just kids, just scared kids trying to find a way to be men in a world that wanted us dead. Miller used bluster and noise. I used books and silence. But we were the same. That letter sits in my copy of Marcus Aurelius now. It's a bookmark, a reminder that you never really know the impact you have on people. You think you're just surviving, but someone is watching. Someone is taking notes. I'm telling you this now because the world is forgetting. I see it in the news. I hear it in the way people talk. They think war is a video game. They think you can press reset. You can't. The things you do, the things you see, they are etched into your soul. You can't read a book to make them go away. But you can share the story. You can warn the next generation. You can tell them that the enemy isn't the guy in the other cockpit. The enemy is the ignorance that put you both there. I was the pilot who read. And if my story can make just one person pick up a history book instead of a gun, then maybe, just maybe, I've finally balanced the equation. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. You think you know war because you've seen the newsreels. You see the black and white footage of planes peeling off in formation, the bombs dropping, the generals shaking hands. It looks clean. It looks organized. But the dogfights, the Knights of the Air stuff I told you about before, that was only half the job. And to be honest, it was the clean half. When you're at 25,000 feet fighting another machine, it's impersonal. It's metal against metal, oxygen masks against oxygen masks. But then came the winter of 1944, the Battle of the Bulge. The Germans pushed back hard through the Ardennes, and everything changed. The weather was atrocious. Fog so thick you could chew it. We were grounded for days, pacing in our Nissen huts, listening to the rain hammer on the corrugated tin roofs, knowing that just a few hundred miles away, American boys were freezing to death in foxholes, getting pounded by Tiger tanks. When the skies finally cleared around Christmas, the orders changed. We weren't just escorting bombers anymore. We became mud movers, ground attack, strafing runs. We traded altitude for proximity. We came down from the heavens and got right down in the dirt. And let me tell you, that is where the soul of a pilot gets stained. You can't use physics to justify strafing a convoy. You can't hide behind aerodynamics when you're flying 50 feet off the deck at 400 miles an hour, looking for anything that moves on a German road. I remember one mission vividly. It was late December. The ground was a patchwork of white snow and dark, churned-up mud. We were hunting trains. The German supply lines were the lifeblood of their offensive. Stop the trains. Stop the tanks. It made sense on paper. It made sense in the briefing room. Our intelligence officer, a major with clean fingernails who never flew, told us, "Everything on the rails is a legitimate military target. If it moves, kill it. I was leading a section of 4 Mustangs. We spotted a locomotive steaming through a valley near Bastogne. It was trying to hide in the shadows of the ridgeline. From up high, it looked like a toy, a model train set. But as I rolled in for the run, the toy became real. I could see the steam venting. I could see the engineer leaning out of the cab. I wasn't fighting a Focke-Wulf anymore. I was fighting a guy doing a job. I lined up the nose. The reticle settled on the boiler. I squeezed the trigger. 6 .50 caliber machine guns roared. The sound in the cockpit is a dull thrum, a vibration that rattles your teeth. I saw the impacts, sparks, then a massive plume of white steam as the boiler exploded. The train derailed, cars buckling and twisting like an angry snake. We circled back. Standard procedure was to strafe the wreckage to ensure nothing was salvageable. As I came around for the second pass, low and slow, I saw people running from the boxcars. They weren't wearing the field gray of the Wehrmacht. They were wearing dark coats, civilians, refugees, forced laborers. I didn't know. I couldn't know. At 350 miles per hour, recognition is a blur. But my wingman, a new kid named Baker, didn't hesitate. He followed the orders. If it moves, kill it. He opened up. The ground chewed up around the running figures. They fell like rag dolls. I pulled up hard, my stomach twisting into a knot. I screamed over the radio, "Cease fire! Cease fire! Save the ammo!" I lied. We had plenty of ammo. I just couldn't watch it. I couldn't watch us turn into butchers. Back at base, Baker was high on adrenaline. "Did you see that secondary explosion, Frank? We got him good." He was slapping backs, lighting a cigar. I walked straight past him, went to my bunk, and pulled out a book on ethics. Spinoza! I tried to read. I tried to find a logical framework that excused what we just did. Necessity of war, collateral damage, the greater good. The words swam on the page. None of them worked. The math didn't balance. I had killed a machine in the sky and felt like a tactician. We had killed people on the ground, and I felt like a murderer. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. That winter was the hardest part of the war for me, not because of the danger, but because of the intimacy of the violence. We were so close to the ground we could see the faces of the men shooting at us with rifles. We could see the fear. We could see the destruction we left behind. And it wasn't just the killing. It was the waiting. The weather in Europe in '44 was an enemy all its own. The damp cold seeped into everything. You'd wake up and your blankets would be damp. Your boots would be stiff. We huddled around these little pot-bellied stoves, feeding them coal, trying to thaw out our hands so we could hold a coffee cup. That's when the professor persona really became my armor. I started holding classes in the barracks. It started as a joke. Miller, before he died, asked me to explain how the gyro gun sight worked. He said, "Frank, make it simple. I'm a pilot, not a mathematician." So I drew diagrams on the back of a cigarette carton. I explained the lead computing, the way the gyroscopes precess to predict the bullet's path. Slowly, other guys gathered around. These tough, terrified kids, most of them 20 or 21 years old, listening to me lecture on physics while the wind howled outside. It gave us something to focus on other than the empty bunks. It gave us an illusion of control. If we understood the machines, maybe the machines wouldn't kill us. But you can't calculate luck, and you can't derive a formula for grief. In January '45, we lost Smitty, my crew chief. Not in combat. A V-2 rocket hit the airfield. 1 minute he was there, wrench in hand, whistling some jazz tune. The next minute, there was just a crater. No warning, no siren, just a supersonic crack and oblivion. Smitty wasn't a soldier in the traditional sense. He fixed planes. He wrote letters to his mom in Iowa. He kept my Mustang, the Axiom, purring like a kitten. I remember standing at the edge of that crater, holding a book I had borrowed from him, a cheap detective novel. He loved those trashy mysteries. I looked at the mud, the twisted metal, and I felt a rage I had never felt before. It wasn't the cold, professional fear of the dogfight. It was hot, blinding anger. The next day, I flew with a vengeance. I didn't care about the physics. I didn't care about the energy management. I wanted to break things. We caught a column of German trucks retreating east. I made 6 passes. I flew so low I clipped a pine tree with my wingtip. I fired until my guns clicked empty. I wanted them to feel what I felt. I wanted to erase them. When I landed, the mechanics found pine needles embedded in the leading edge of my wing. They slapped me on the back. "Hell of a flying, Sarge," they said. I went behind the hangar and threw up. That was the duality of it. The hero and the monster were separated by a trigger pull. I think that's why I clung to the book so hard. They were the only things that didn't change. The laws of thermodynamics were the same in Brooklyn as they were in Berlin. The words of Shakespeare didn't change because Smitty died. They were constants in a world that had lost its mind. I remember reading All Quiet on the Western Front during that time. A German book, written by a German soldier from the First War. The guys called me a traitor for reading enemy propaganda. I tried to explain to them that Remarque wasn't the enemy. He was us, just wearing a different uniform 20 years ago. They didn't get it. They didn't want to get it. Hate is easier than empathy. Hate is a fuel. Empathy is a brake. And in war, you don't want to hit the brakes. There was a specific mission in February 45 that tested everything I thought I knew about myself. We were escorting B-24s this time. The target was a marshalling yard near Dresden. The flak was intense, thick black clouds of death that you had to fly straight through. You could hear the shrapnel rattling against the fuselage like gravel. We were weaving, trying to throw off the German aim. Suddenly I took a hit, a nasty one. The engine sputtered, coughed, and died. Oil pressure dropped to 0. The prop windmilled to a halt. The silence is the loudest thing you'll ever hear. 1 second, you have 1,500 horsepower screaming in your ears. The next, just the rushing wind. Mayday, mayday, Axiom is going down. I called it in calm, or as calm as I could fake. I was too low to bail out safely, maybe 800 feet. Below me was a patchwork of fields and a small village. I had to belly it in. I spotted a snowy field on the outskirts of the town. I dropped the flaps, trying to bleed off speed, trying to soften the blow. The ground rushed up. I braced myself. The impact was violent. The scoop dug into the snow, throwing up a blinding white curtain. The plane bucked, slid, spun, and finally slammed to a halt against a stone wall. I sat there for a moment, checking for limbs. I was bruised. My head was ringing, but I was alive. I popped the canopy and scrambled out. Standard procedure, destroy the radio, grab the survival kit, and run. I ran towards a copse of trees nearby. I was behind enemy lines, deep inside Germany. My heart was hammering a rhythm of pure survival instinct. Hide, evasion, escape. I buried my parachute in the snow and covered it with branches. I huddled in the undergrowth, shivering. I watched the village. I saw an old man come out of a house near the crash site. He was wearing a heavy wool coat and carrying a shotgun. A farmer. He walked up to the Axiom. He looked at the American star on the wing. He looked at the open cockpit. Then he looked right at the trees where I was hiding. He knew. He had to know. I put my hand on my .45 pistol. This was it. Me or him. An old man defending his land or a young pilot trying to get home. I calculated the distance. 50 yards. I was a decent shot. If he raised that shotgun, I would drop him. I flicked the safety off. The click sounded like a gunshot in the quiet winter air. The old man froze. He looked towards the sound. We locked eyes across that snowy field. He was just a granddad. Probably had grandsons fighting on the Eastern Front. He stood there for what felt like an eternity. Then, he did something I didn't expect. He slowly broke the shotgun open, draping it over his arm to show it wasn't ready to fire. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an apple. A withered winter apple. He tossed it into the snow, about halfway between us. Then he turned around and walked back to his house. He never called the soldiers. He never looked back. I waited until dark, then I retrieved the apple. It was frozen solid, but it was the best thing I ever tasted. That old man taught me a lesson about humanity that wasn't in any of my books. He could have been a hero to his village by capturing the terror flieger. Instead, he chose a moment of grace. Why? Was he tired of the war too? Did he see his own son in me? I'll never know. But that apple kept me going. I walked for 3 nights, moving only in the dark, navigating by the stars, another use for my astronomy books. I eventually linked up with a reconnaissance unit from the 3rd Army. When I walked into their camp, filthy, freezing, and smelling of high-octane fuel, they almost shot me. I had to recite the batting lineup of the Brooklyn Dodgers to prove I was an American. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. Coming back from being missing in action is a strange experience. Everyone looks at you like you're a ghost. You miss the rhythm of the squadron. You miss the inside jokes. Life had moved on without you. When I walked back into the barracks, there was a new guy in my bunk, a fresh-faced kid from California. He had moved my books to the floor. "Hey," I said, "you're in my spot." He looked terrified. "Sarge, they said you were dead." "Not yet," I said, "and pick up the books. That's Newton you're stepping on." The end of the war was messy. It wasn't a clean break. As we pushed into Germany, the resistance crumbled, but the fanaticism didn't. We saw things from the air that gave us nightmares. Columns of refugees stretching for miles. Cities turned into moonscapes. And the camps. We flew over one of the camps near the end. We didn't know what it was at first. Just rows of barracks and skeletal figures looking up. The smell. Even at 1,000 feet you could smell it. A sweet, rotting sickness that permeated the cockpit. We stopped making jokes after that. We stopped talking about scores. The books I read about history, about civilization, they seemed like fairy tales. How could a civilization that produced Beethoven and Goethe produce that? It was a question I couldn't answer then, and I can't answer now. I flew my last mission on May 7th, 1945. It was a patrol. No enemy aircraft. The sky was blue, painfully blue. I remember looking down at the ruin of Europe and feeling a profound exhaustion. Not physical tired, soul tired. I landed the Axiom for the last time. I shut down the engine. The propeller spun down to a halt. Tick, 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 tick. Then silence. It was over. I sat in the cockpit for an hour. I didn't want to get out. As long as I was in the plane, I was the librarian, the guy who knew the angles, the guy who survived. Once I stepped out onto the tarmac, I was just Frank Sullivan again, a 23-year-old kid with no job, a head full of trauma, and a box of books. I was terrified of the peace. War gives you a purpose. It gives you a direction. Survive, kill, protect. Peace? Peace is a blank page, and that scared the hell out of me. I packed my kit. I took the photo of Sarah. I took the napkin with the diagram. I took the letters I had written and never sent. I left the .45 pistol. I didn't want to touch a gun ever again. I took a boat home. The Atlantic was calm. I spent the whole voyage on the deck reading. I read The Odyssey, a story about a soldier trying to get home, trying to navigate a world of monsters and gods. I felt like Odysseus, but I didn't have a goddess looking out for me. I just had my luck and my logic. When the Statue of Liberty came into view, the guys on the deck cheered. They threw their hats in the air. I didn't cheer. I felt a lump in my throat so big I couldn't breathe. I thought about the kid in the Focke-Wulf. I thought about the old man with the apple. I thought about Smitty. I thought about Miller. They should have been seeing this. They paid for my ticket. I got off the boat, took a train to Chicago, and walked to Sarah's house. I hadn't told her I was coming. I stood on her porch for 10 minutes, afraid to knock. What if she didn't recognize me? What if I was too different? I saw my reflection in the glass of the door. I looked older. My eyes were harder. I knocked. She opened the door. She dropped the laundry basket she was holding. "Frank," she whispered. "I'm back," I said. I brought my books. She hugged me, and for the first time in 2 years, I let go. I really let go. I collapsed into her arms right there on the porch. The librarian had finally closed the book on the war. Or so I thought, but as I told you before, the war has a way of staying with you. It's in the silence between thoughts. It's in the sudden, loud noises. And it's in the lessons you try to pass on. I went to college. I studied engineering. I wanted to build. I wanted to create structures that stood up, not knock them down. I got married. I had kids. I lived the American dream. But I kept a secret library, not of books, but of memories. I cataloged every face, every crash, every decision. One of the hardest things was the noise of regular life. People complaining about traffic, about the weather, about their coffee being cold. I wanted to shake them. Do you know how lucky you are? Do you know what the world looks like when it's burning? But I didn't. I stayed quiet. I was polite, Frank. I was the guy who fixed the toaster. I was the guy who helped with the math homework. I never told my kids about the strafing runs. I never told them about the apple. I wanted them to be innocent. I wanted them to think the world was safe. Maybe that was wrong. Maybe I should have told them. Maybe if we told our kids the truth, the ugly, unvarnished truth about what we did, they wouldn't be so eager to send their own kids off to the next one. That's why I'm talking to you now. Because I'm nearing the end of my own runway. The engine is running a little rough. The oil pressure is dropping. And I don't want these stories to die with me. I don't want the librarian to just be a nickname on a dusty roster. I want you to know that war isn't about glory. It's about a million tragic calculations made in split seconds. It's about the loss of potential. Think about the books Smitty would have read. Think about the family that German kid would have raised. Think about the songs Miller would have sung. They are gone, erased, and all I can do is be the witness. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. There's one more story I need to tell you. It happened years later, in the 80s. I was retired. I was volunteering at a local high school, tutoring kids in physics. There was this one kid, quiet, kept to himself, always had his nose in a book. Reminded me of, well, me. He was struggling with vector analysis. I sat with him one afternoon. "Look," I said, "don't think of it as numbers. Think of it as forces. Think of a plane in a dive." I drew a diagram. The same diagram I drew on the napkin in 1944. The kid's eyes lit up. "I get it," he said. "It's about balance." "Exactly," I said. "It's always about balance." A few weeks later, he came to me. "Mr. Sullivan," he said, "I signed up." "Signed up for what?" I asked. "The Air Force. I want to be a pilot. Like you." My heart sank. I felt a physical blow to my chest. I had tried to teach him physics, and instead, I had inspired him to go to war. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and scream, "No, don't go! Read books, build bridges, don't get in the cockpit!" But I couldn't. He was proud, he was patriotic, he was young. I forced a smile. "Keep your head on a swivel," I told him, "and never stop reading." He went to the Gulf War, he flew F-15s, he came back safe. But when I saw him again, that light in his eyes, that curiosity, it was dimmed. He had the look, the 1,000-yard stare, the look of a man who has seen the equation of life reduced to zero. We didn't talk about the war. We talked about math. We talked about books. But we both knew. We were part of the same fraternity now, the fraternity of the broken. So, here I am, Frank Sullivan, the librarian. I've told you about the skies over Germany. I've told you about the mud of the Bulge. I've told you about the ghosts that follow me. You might be wondering, was it worth it? That's the question every veteran asks himself in the dark. Was it worth it? I look at my grandkids playing in the yard. They are free. They speak English. They don't know the sound of a falling bomb. They don't know the smell of a burning city. So, yes, in the grand calculation, in the final accounting, it was worth it. But the cost was high. It was paid in the currency of youth, innocence, and blood. And it's a debt I'm still paying, one memory at a time. I hope you never have to make those calculations. I hope your only battles are in textbooks and boardrooms. But if you do find yourself in the storm, if you do find yourself with the world trying to kill you, remember the librarian's advice. Panic is the enemy. Knowledge is the shield. And never ever forget that the person in the other cockpit or on the other end of the rifle is just a part of the same tragic equation. This is Frank Sullivan, signing off. Keep reading, keep thinking, and keep the blue side up. I turned the recorder off, but I'm turning it back on because I sat here in the dark for a few minutes, looking at that red light fade, and I realized I cheated you. I gave you the Hollywood ending. I gave you the redemption arc. I told you about the apple and the handshake in Chicago and the peace I found. That's the story I tell at the VFW hall when I want people to feel good. But you didn't come here for a bedtime story. You came here for the truth. And the truth is, the road to that apple in the snow was paved with things I usually don't talk about. Things that don't fit into a nice little moral lesson about physics and books. I skipped a lot. I skipped the beginning. I skipped the summer of '44, Normandy. Everyone talks about Omaha Beach. They talk about the guys in the landing craft, the ramps dropping, the machine gun fire, and God bless them, they took the brunt of hell. But nobody tells you what it was like at 10,000 feet, looking down at the greatest traffic jam in human history. To understand the librarian, to understand why I buried my head in aerodynamics manuals, you have to understand June 6th. Because before that day, I was just a kid who liked airplanes. After that day, I realized that an airplane is just a coffin with a propeller if you don't respect the chaos. We were painted with invasion stripes, black and white bands on the wings and fuselage. It was supposed to stop friendly fire. That was the theory. I read the memo. To facilitate rapid visual identification by ground and naval forces. It sounded so clinical. In reality, it meant, please don't shoot me. I remember walking around the Axiom with a bucket of paint and a brush, slapping those stripes on. It felt like war paint. It felt primal. We weren't sleek silver birds anymore. We were marked. We took off in the dark. The channel was invisible, just a black void beneath us. But then, as the sun started to crack the horizon, the water turned purple, then gray, and I saw it. The ships. Thousands of them. It looked like you could walk from England to France without getting your feet wet. From my altitude, the battleships looked like gray splinters, but when they opened fire, the shockwaves rippled the water. I could see the muzzle flashes, bright orange blooms, and then, seconds later, the smoke rings. I was doing the math in my head. Time of flight. Trajectory. I was calculating where those 14-inch shells would land before they even hit. It was a way to keep my mind off the fact that the sky was filling up with flak. My job that morning wasn't dogfighting, it was top cover. We were supposed to patrol the beachhead and stop the Luftwaffe from strafing the guys on the sand. But the Luftwaffe didn't show up in force, not at first, so we just circled and watched. I looked down at the beaches. I saw the landing craft hitting the shore. I saw the little dots spilling out. I saw dots stop moving. I saw the water turning red. I'm not being poetic. I mean literally, from 2 miles up, the surf line changed color. I felt a profound sense of helplessness. I was sitting in a 2,000 horsepower machine, armed with 6 heavy machine guns, and I couldn't do a damn thing to help those guys. I couldn't strafe the bunkers, the smoke was too thick, and the risk of hitting our own men was too high. So I just watched. I watched men die in silence. My radio was full of chatter, but it was all operational stuff. Red leader, Vector 270. Blue 2, tighten up. Nobody said, "My God, look at the beach." We were professionals. We were detached. That detachment broke on D+3. June 9th. We were operating out of a temporary strip in England, flying sorties around the clock. I was tired. My eyes felt like they had sand in them. We were sent to hit a German convoy moving up to reinforce the line near Caen. This was hedgerow country. If you've never seen the bocage in Normandy, imagine a sunken road with 10-foot-high hedges on either side, made of thick roots and earth. It's a maze, perfect for tanks to hide, a nightmare for pilots to spot them. I was flying wing for a guy named Lieutenant Kellers. Kellers wasn't like Miller. He wasn't a bully. He was a rich kid from Connecticut, went to Yale, played polo. He treated the war like a sporting event. He had a silk scarf and everything. He used to quote poetry over the radio. "Into the valley of death rode the 600, he'd say as we descended. I liked Kellers. He was kind. He once gave me a tin of real coffee his parents sent him. But he didn't respect the physics. He flew with his heart, not his head. We spotted the convoy, trucks and half-tracks trying to sneak through a gap in the trees. "Tally-ho!" Kellers yelled. "Let's give them a warm welcome, Frank." "Wait," I said. "Check the drift. The wind is coming from the north. The smoke is blowing across the road. We won't see the flak traps." "Don't be a bore, Sullivan," he laughed. "Follow me in." He rolled his Mustang over and dove. I had to follow. That's the job. You stick to your leader. But I kept my speed up, I kept my energy. Kellers got low. He lined up on a truck. He started firing. I saw the truck explode, but then I saw the trap. Just as I had calculated, hidden in the smoke of the burning truck, was a Whirlwind, a German anti-aircraft tank with 4 20mm cannons mounted in a turret. It opened up. It didn't look like gunfire. It looked like a garden hose spraying green light. The tracers arced up and walked right into Keller's plane. They hit the engine. They hit the cockpit. There was no fire, no smoke. The plane just ceased to be a flying object. It became a falling rock. It slammed into the hedgerow at 300 miles per hour. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I pulled up. I pulled up so hard my vision went black. I climbed back to 5,000 feet. I circled the spot. There was just a crater and a smudge of black smoke. Kellers was gone. The Yale degree, the polo ponies, the poetry, vaporized because he didn't account for the wind drift concealing the line of sight. I flew back alone. That was the first time I really understood that the librarian wasn't just a quirk. It was a survival mechanism. Kellers died because he was brave. I survived because I was cynical. I survived because I looked at that smoke and saw a vector for a trap, not a target. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. When I landed, the ground crew asked where the lieutenant was. I just shook my head. I walked past them, into the tent, and threw up into a bucket. Then I took Keller's cot, folded his blankets, and put his personal items in a box. I found his book of poetry, Tennyson. I opened it. He had underlined a line: to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. I closed the book and put it in the box. Then I went to my footlocker and took out a manual on German anti-aircraft ballistics. I read it until the sun came up. I memorized the rate of fire of the Flak-Vierling 38. I memorized the traverse speed of the turret. I promised myself I would never, ever dive into smoke again without knowing what was behind it. That summer in Normandy changed the way we fought. It wasn't the clean, high-altitude duels anymore. It was a dirty, grinding war of attrition. We started carrying bombs, 500-pounders slung under the wings. Flying a Mustang with bombs is like trying to dance with ankle weights. It ruins the aerodynamics. The center of gravity shifts. The drag increases exponentially. You feel the plane fighting you. I became an expert on toss bombing. It wasn't standard doctrine, but I figured it out using, you guessed it, physics. Most guys would dive at a 45-degree angle, release the bomb, and pull out. It was dangerous. You had to get close to the target, right into the teeth of the flak. I worked out a different method. I would come in low and fast, level with the deck, then pull up into a sharp 4G climb. At a precise angle, calculated based on speed and bomb weight, I would hit the release. The bomb would separate, travel in a parabolic arc, and land on the target while I was already turning away, safe from the blast and the guns. The other guys thought I was showing off. "Look at the professor," they'd say, trying to play catch with a bomb. But then they saw my strike photos. I was dropping bombs into the courtyards of German HQs while they were scattering craters in empty fields. The colonel noticed. He made me the squadron navigation and bombing officer. I had to teach the tactic, standing in front of a chalkboard, drawing parabolas for a room full of guys who just wanted to kill Nazis. "Listen," I told them, "the bomb wants to keep going forward. That's Newton's first law. Gravity wants to pull it down. That's the law of universal gravitation. You are the variable. If you release too early, you kill a French cow. If you release too late, you miss the tank. You have to feel the arc." Some of them got it, some didn't. Miller tried. This was before he started respecting me. He sat in the back, whittling a stick with his knife. "Just tell me when to push the button, Frank," he sneered. "I can't tell you," I snapped. "I'm not in your cockpit. You have to know." 2 days later, Miller missed a release, hung onto his bomb too long, and nearly blew his own tail off. He came back with shrapnel holes in his stabilizer. He didn't sneer at the chalkboard after that. But there's one mission from July '44 that haunts me more than the others. It wasn't a combat mission. Not really. We were tasked with a milk run, escorting a C-47 transport plane that was dropping supplies to the French resistance near St. Lo. It was supposed to be easy. Night mission. Full moon. Flying at night is a different beast. You lose your horizon. You rely entirely on your instruments. The gyro horizon is your god. If it tumbles, you die. We were flying in a loose formation, running silent. No radio, just hand signals and navigation lights. I looked over at the C-47. It was a big, lumbering bird, defenseless. I felt protective of it. We reached the drop zone. I saw the signal fires on the ground, 3 bonfires in a triangle. The resistance was there. The C-47 slowed down, opening its cargo door. I watched the parachutes bloom in the moonlight. Crates of ammo, rifles, medical supplies. It was going perfectly. Then, out of the darkness, tracers. Red tracers. German night fighters. A Ju-88 had been stalking us. It had radar, the Liechtenstein radar arrays on its nose. It had seen us before we saw it. It came up from below, hiding in the ground clutter on the radar, and raked the C-47 from belly to wing. The transport plane caught fire immediately. It was a flying torch. I screamed into my mask. "Brake! Brake right!" I rolled the axiom and went after the Ju-88. I didn't check my instruments. I was flying on rage. I saw the German plane turn away, trying to disappear back into the dark. I wasn't going to let him. I pushed the throttle through the gate. War emergency power. The engine howled. I closed the distance. I got him in my sights. I could see the exhaust flames from his engines. I fired. My tracers chewed up his tail. Pieces flew off. He banked hard, diving towards the ground. I followed him. I was going to chase him into the dirt. I wanted to see him burn like the C-47 was burning. But then, something stopped me. A voice in my head. "Check your altitude." I glanced at the altimeter. 800 feet. We were in a steep dive. If I followed him for 2 more seconds, I wouldn't be able to pull out. The physics of compression. At high speeds, the air gets so dense it locks the controls. The Ju-88 pilot was dead, or he was panicking. He was going in. If I stayed on his tail to make sure, I was going in too. I had a choice. Revenge or survival. Satisfaction or the next mission. I let go of the stick. I rolled level. I watched the Ju-88 continue its dive until it disappeared into the blackness of the French countryside. A second later, a dull orange flash lit up the clouds from below. He was gone. I turned back to look for the C-47. It was gone too, just a smear of burning wreckage in a field. I circled once. I saw no parachutes. The crew, the supplies, the hope for those resistance fighters, all ash. I flew back to base alone again. The silence in the cockpit was heavy. I thought about the men in that C-47. They weren't fighter pilots. They were truck drivers in the sky. They didn't have guns. They trusted us to protect them, and I had failed. The math hadn't saved them. My parabolas hadn't saved them. I landed and sat on the wing for a long time. The mechanic, a guy named O'Malley, came over. "Rough one, Sarge." "Yeah," I said, "rough one." "Did you get the Jerry?" "Yeah, I got him." "Good," O'Malley said. "That's something." But it wasn't something. It was nothing. It was a zero-sum game. We traded a transport for a night fighter. The ledger didn't balance. That night I didn't read. I couldn't look at the books. I stared at the ceiling of the Neeson hut and listened to the breathing of the other pilots. They were sleeping. How could they sleep? That's the part of the story I don't tell at the parties. The doubt. The crushing, suffocating doubt that maybe none of it mattered. Maybe we were just tossing metal into a grinder and calling it strategy. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. But you keep going. You wake up the next morning, you drink the terrible coffee, you eat the powdered eggs, and you brief for the next mission. Because stopping means thinking, and thinking is dangerous. Let's move forward. August 1944. The Falaise Pocket. The German army was trapped. We were closing the net. This was the turkey shoot. The roads were clogged with German vehicles trying to escape east. We flew sortie after sortie, just hammering them. It wasn't combat anymore. It was an execution. I was leading a flight of 4. We came upon a horse-drawn column. You heard me right. Horses. The mighty German Wehrmacht, the masters of the Blitzkrieg, were using farm horses to pull their artillery because they had no fuel left. It was pathetic, and it was tragic. I radioed for permission to engage. "Control, this is Red Leader. Target is soft. Horse-drawn artillery. Request instructions." There was a pause. Then the voice came back, crackling with static. "Red Leader, destroy the target." I looked down. I saw the horses rearing in panic as the sound of our engines washed over them. I saw the drivers whipping them, trying to get them into the trees. "I can't do it," I said to myself. I flipped the radio switch. "Red Flight, this is Leader. We're going to pass. Save the ammo for the tanks. Repeat, do not engage the horses." "Leader, this is Red 3, a voice piped up. It was a new guy, itching for a kill. "That's artillery down there. We have orders." "I don't give a damn about orders, 3, I barked. "I said hold fire. Those are animals. They didn't sign up for this." We flew over them. I dipped my wing. I saw the German drivers stop whipping the horses. They looked up. They saw us pass. They knew they should be dead. When we got back, Red 3 reported me. Technically, he was right. I had disobeyed a direct order. I had let enemy equipment escape. The major called me into his office. He was a hard man, a veteran of North Africa. He had a scar running down his cheek. "Sullivan," he said, looking at the report, "you refused to engage a valid target." "Yes, sir." "Why?" "It was horse-drawn, sir. It wasn't a threat, it was slaughter." The major looked at me for a long time. He lit a cigarette. "You know I could court-martial you? I could strip those stripes off your arm and send you to the infantry." "I know, sir." He blew a smoke ring. "My grandfather raised horses," he said quietly. "If you had shot those horses, Sullivan, I would have grounded you myself. Get out of my office and don't let it happen with a tank." "Yes, sir." I walked out. I felt lighter. It was a small victory, a microscopic victory in a war of millions. But it was mine. I had drawn a line. I had used my own logic, my own moral calculus. The books on ethics I read, maybe they weren't useless after all. They taught me that a man is defined by what he refuses to do. But let's get back to the air. Let's talk about the machines. The P-51 Mustang. You've seen pictures. It's beautiful. But flying it is a physical relationship. You wear the plane. The cockpit is tight. Your shoulders touch the sides. The stick is right between your knees. You feel every vibration. You smell the hot oil, the cordite, the sweat. There's a phenomenon called compressibility. I mentioned it earlier. As you approach the speed of sound, Mach 1, the air stops behaving like air and starts behaving like concrete. Shockwaves form on the wings. The center of lift moves back. The nose tucks under. The controls freeze. It terrified pilots. You'd be in a dive, pulling back on the stick with all your strength, and the plane would just keep going down, faster and faster, until the wings ripped off or you hit the ground. The engineers didn't understand it at first, but I had read a paper by a German physicist named Prandtl. I knew about the shockwaves. I knew that fighting the stick was useless. You had to use the trim tabs. You had to fly the plane with your fingertips, not your biceps. I had a chance to prove it in September. I was testing a new prop setting at high altitude. I was at 30,000 feet, alone. I decided to see what the axiom could really do. I rolled over and dove, full throttle. The speed built up, 400, 450, 500. The needle on the airspeed indicator was vibrating. The noise changed. It went from a roar to a high-pitched scream. The controls started to stiffen. It felt like the stick was set in cement. 550 easier mar. The plane started to shudder, buffeting. The nose wanted to drop. This was the danger zone. Most guys would chop the throttle and pray. I kept the throttle open. I reached down to the trim wheel. I rolled in nose-up trim. The little tab on the elevator moved just a fraction of an inch. That's all it took. The aerodynamic force on that tiny tab was immense. It forced the elevator up, fighting the shockwave. The nose began to rise. The G-forces hit me. 6 Gs, 7 Gs. My vision tunneled. I was crushing into my seat. My G-suit inflated, squeezing my legs to keep the blood in my brain. I grunted, forcing air out of my lungs. Hook maneuver, squeeze the abs. The plane leveled out at 15,000 feet. I had recovered. I had broken the compressibility dive. I was sweating, shaking, but I was laughing. I was laughing like a maniac. I had beaten the air. I had beaten the physics. I landed and told the crew chief, "She's a good girl, but she gets temperamental past Mach 0. 75. He looked at me like I was speaking Greek. "Mach what?" "Never mind," I said. "Just check the rivets on the tail." I think I might have popped a few. That knowledge, that confidence in the machine, is what saved me in November during the fight I told you about in the beginning. The one with the 6 Focke-Wulfs. If I hadn't pushed the envelope that day in September, I wouldn't have had the guts to pull that maneuver in November. Everything is connected. Every hour of reading, every test flight, every conversation with a mechanic, it all builds a database in your head. And when death comes knocking, you query the database. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. But confidence can be a trap too. Let's talk about target fixation. It's a killer. You get so focused on the enemy plane in your sights, the crosshairs, the distance, the angle, that you lose situational awareness. You forget the ground. You forget the other planes. You forget yourself. I saw it happen to a guy named Cowboy Evans, October 44. We were over the Rhineland. Cowboy was a hotshot, aggressive. He got on the tail of a Me-109. The German pilot was good. He was twisting, turning, diving. Cowboy stayed with him. He was glued to him. "I got him! I got him!" Cowboy was screaming on the radio. "Check your 6, Cowboy!" I warned him. "And watch your altitude! I almost have him!" The German dived into a valley. Cowboy followed. They were weaving between hills. It was incredible flying. But Cowboy had tunnel vision. He didn't see the high-tension power lines stretching across the valley. The Germans saw them. He went under. Cowboy focused only on the 109, didn't react in time. I saw the spark, a bright blue flash as his wing clipped the wire. The plane cartwheeled, it disintegrated in mid-air. 1 second, a P-51. The next, a fireball tumbling into the river. "Cowboy's down," I said. My voice was flat. That night, I sat on my bunk and stared at the wall. Target fixation. It's a metaphor for life, isn't it? You get so obsessed with a goal, money, a girl, a promotion, a kill, that you don't see the wire that's going to cut you in half. I wrote that down in my journal. Beware the tunnel. The tunnel ends in a wall. I haven't told you about Paris. We got a pass to Paris after the liberation. 48 hours. It was a city waking up from a nightmare. The lights were coming back on. There were girls throwing flowers at us. There was wine. I didn't go to the bars with the other guys. I went to the Louvre. It was mostly empty. The masterpieces had been hidden away during the occupation. But the building itself, the scale of it. I walked through the empty halls. I found a small bookstore near the Seine that was open. The owner was an old man with a beret. He spoke a little English. I bought a copy of Le Petit Prince by Saint-Exupéry. He was a pilot too. He disappeared in July 44, just a few months before. I sat on a bench by the river and read it. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. I sat there in my uniform, a killer of men, reading a children's book about a prince on an asteroid. And I cried. I cried for Kellers. I cried for the horses. I cried for Cowboy. I cried for myself. The people passing by must have thought I was crazy. An American pilot weeping over a kid's book. But that book made more sense to me than the war did. The war was absurd. The book was true. I kept that book in my flight suit leg pocket for the rest of the war. It was my talisman. When things got bad, when the flak was thick, I'd pat my leg and feel the spine of the book. What is essential is invisible to the eye. It reminded me that the radar blips weren't the whole story. The enemy wasn't just a target. He was a man. He had a rose on his asteroid, too. This brings me to a strange encounter in late October. Before the big fight I told you about, we were on a sweep near Aachen. I had separated to chase a straggler, but he got away. I was turning back when I saw a lone plane. Not a German, a Spitfire, a British plane. But it was acting strange. It was flying erratically, dipping a wing, then leveling out. I pulled up alongside it. I looked into the cockpit. The pilot was slumped over. The canopy was shattered, blood on the inside of the glass. He was wounded. Badly. He was drifting towards German territory. I switched to the universal emergency frequency. Spitfire, this is Mustang. Do you copy? Over. A crackle, then a weak voice. British accent. I hear you, Mustang. I'm in a bit of a spot. I see that. What's your status? Legs gone. Can't feel the pedals. Bleeding a fair bit. Okay, listen to me. I'm going to guide you home. We have a forward strip near Brussels. It's not far. Can you follow me? I'll try, old boy. Everything is getting a bit gray. Stay with me, I said. Focus on my wingtip. Don't look at the ground. Look at my wingtip. I throttled back, dropped my flaps to match his speed. We flew like that for 20 minutes. A slow, somber dance. I talked to him the whole time. I asked him about home. Where are you from? Leeds, he whispered. My dad's a baker, makes the best scones. You should try a scone, Yank. I will, I promised. When we get down, you buy me a scone. Deal. We crossed the lines. I saw the airstrip. Okay, we're here. Gear down. Gear handle is stuck, he said. His voice was fading. Can't reach it. Okay, belly landing, it's soft grass. You can do this. Shallow approach. Cut the power when I tell you. We descended together. I stayed right with him until the last second. Okay, cut power. Now! He cut the power. The Spitfire settled into the grass. It slid, digging up a furrow of earth. The prop bent. It came to a stop. I circled overhead. I saw the ambulance race out. I saw them pull him out of the cockpit. I waited. I wanted to see a thumbs up. I wanted to see movement. The medic stood up and shook his head. He pulled a blanket over the pilot's face. I punched the dashboard of my Mustang. I broke the glass on the clock. Damn it! I screamed. Damn it! He had flown that plane for 20 minutes on pure willpower. He had made it home, and he died on the grass. I never got his name. Just a voice from Leeds who liked scones. Another ghost for the library. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. These are the things that wear you down. It's not one big event. It's the accumulation of little tragedies. It's the weight of the empty bunks. It's the letters you have to write to mothers, lying about how their sons died instantly and without pain, when you know they screamed for their mothers in the burning wreckage. I became an expert at those letters. I had a template. He was a brave pilot. He was liked by everyone. He did his duty. I felt like a fraud every time I signed my name. But what do you tell them? The truth? No. The truth is for us. The truth is for the ones who were there. For the families, you give them the myth. It's a kindness. By November, I was tired. Bone tired. That's when the librarian persona started to crack a little. I wasn't reading as much. I was just staring. I'd sit in the cockpit before a mission and just stare at the gauges, trying to summon the energy to care. That's when the big mission happened. The one with the 6 Focke-Wulfs. I told you about the fight. I told you about the mechanics of it. But I didn't tell you about the fear I felt after. When I landed that day, with the shredded tail and the empty fuel tank, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt marked. I felt like I had used up my luck. There's a statistical probability of survival. Every mission you survive lowers the odds for the next one. That's the gambler's fallacy, I know. The events are independent, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like there's a bullet with your name on it, and it's getting closer. I remember Miller pouring me that drink. Welcome back, Professor. I drank it. It burned. Miller? I said. I don't think I can do it again. He looked at me. Serious. You don't have a choice, Frank. None of us do. We just get in the plane until they tell us to stop or until we stop coming back. He was right. That was the brutal simplicity of it. There was no opting out. So I kept flying. Through the winter, through the bulge, through the spring. One final technical story, the Me-262, the jet. We had heard rumors. Intelligence reports about a turbo plane without a propeller. We didn't believe it. Physics said you needed a prop to move air, but the Germans had done it. They had cracked the jet engine. I saw one in March 45. I was at 20,000 feet. I saw a streak of smoke, and then this shark-like shape zoomed past us. It was going so fast it looked like we were standing still. It had to be doing 550, maybe 600 miles per hour. It climbed straight up, defying gravity. My wingman yelled, "What the hell is that?" "That," I said, feeling a chill, "is the future." We couldn't catch it. It was impossible. But I knew its weakness. I had read about the early jet experiments. They had terrible acceleration. They needed long runways, and they were vulnerable when landing. "We don't chase it," I ordered. "We find where it lives." We followed the smoke trail back. We found the airfield, concrete runway, long one. We waited high above, circling in the sun. Eventually, the jet came back. It was low on fuel. It had to slow down to land. It dropped its gear. It was vulnerable. "Now!" I called. We dove. The rat catch. That's what we called it. Killing them while they tried to land. It felt dirty. It wasn't a fair fight, but the Me-262 was a game changer. If they had enough of them, they could wipe us out. We had to kill it in the cradle. I strafed the jet as it touched down. It exploded in a ball of kerosene. I didn't feel like a pilot then. I felt like a pest control officer. But I also felt a grudging respect for the engineers who built it. They had pushed the science forward, even as their country crumbled. It was a paradox. The greatest technological leap of the decade was made by a regime of monsters. That's the thing about war. It accelerates everything. Medicine, radar, rocketry, aviation. We leap forward in technology by standing on a pile of corpses. It's a steep price for progress. I have one more part to this story. The immediate aftermath, the occupation, because the shooting stops, but the dying doesn't. If you're willing to stick with me, I want to tell you about the time I spent in Germany after the surrender, about the displaced persons, about the hunger, and about how I tried to use my books to rebuild something other than a bridge.